Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 138. Now, you have just had the three hosts with you for the last 2 weeks. Well, hopefully you're not too sick of us already. But we are now moving into a run where we have, I think, the next 4 or 5 weeks, we have guests lined up from all over the world. And we are starting that run with a guest today, a fantastic guest from the United States, who I will introduce you to in a minute. And he is somewhere in the United States that we've never had a guest from before. I'll leave you with that, and then I'll introduce him in a minute. So, Peter, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. So, as a clue for everyone, there's a film that says it's based on true events, and it's not. So there's your clue for where our guest comes from.
Okay.
Do you not remember that at the start of the film? It says this is based on true events, and it's not. It's Coen. I think it's Coen Brothers, isn't it?
It's Coen Brothers, yeah.
It's like an artistic license thing that they did, because obviously the events that happen in the film are ridiculous. So it's yeah. Well, there you go. No, I'm good. I want to give a quick shout out actually, because I've had a few conversations with different people this week who've joined. I've got a Facebook group, Becoming Resilient. And there's a couple of people joined that this week, and I've had conversations with a few people who were friends of the show. So it was great. So there's a guy called Adrian. I'll not give you their surnames, but it was a guy called Adrian. Hello, Adrian, and a guy called Matthew with 1 T, which is cool.
They don't want to admit it.
But no, it's just really nice because like people are kind of reaching out and joining like my group. They'll be in the Health Authority group as well, but they've joined mine. Then we've had a chat on DM and stuff like that, and they said they really appreciate it. Matthew said he listens to it in the car on the way to work and everything. So yeah, we're connecting with people, which is great, which we'd like to hear. So thank you.
And I know that some of the listeners will be meeting our guests next month in the UK.
Yes.
So there's another clue there. Mr. Paul Bassett, how are you doing?
Not bad. Yesterday I had a workout that was based on true events. It had some artistic license in it.
Good.
10-minute set of pain.
Okay.
I saw the you put something up on Instagram of you afterwards, didn't you? You just lying on the floor next to a bell.
Yeah. I came up with a good list of excuses of why I didn't go according to plan.
Oh, okay.
You've got to have in the back pocket, haven't you, as a fitness professional? You've got to have your excuses in.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm actually having some. Well, I suppose when we're recording this, I've got some time off planned, which is I don't know what to do.
Like 10 minutes this afternoon or something?
Yeah. Basically, I'm just going to lock the door to the toilet and hope no one bothers me. But I actually, at the moment, if 2 4-year-olds run in and 2 7-year-olds run in, it's Easter holidays, so it means that we have no childcare. The schools are out, so I'm sure you're the same, James. So it means entertaining children.
Honestly, teachers wanting that time off and everything, it's a disgrace, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, my missus is a teacher, and that is a joke.
Yeah. You're going to have a nice evening tonight.
So we are joined today all the way from Fargo, North Dakota in the United States by Jon Engum. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing great, James. Thank you for inviting me to be on the podcast. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Excellent. I will give a brief intro to John, and then I'll kind of hand over to him, and he can kind of talk in obviously more detail. I've not actually personally met John, but I will be meeting him next month when he is over at Unique Results in Chelmsford in England. He will be teaching and leading the Strongfirst SFB bodyweight certification on Saturday and Sunday, the 20th and the 21st of May. And he will also be teaching and leading and holding the flexible steel level 1 certification on the Friday, the day before. So I know that we've got some listeners already who are coming for the Strongfirst bodyweight certification. And we've also got some listeners who are coming for the flexible steel. And hopefully after listening to today, some more of you may be interested in joining us for one or both of those things. But Jon is a Strongfirst certified master instructor. He's he'll tell us about this in a minute, because we had a bit of a conversation before, but he's the 7th Dan Kukiwan certified Grandmaster martial artist in Taekwondo. He's the author of Flexible Steel. He's the creator, chief instructor of the Flexible Steel system, the owner of Engum's Academy, Engum's Taekwondo Association, and also of Jon Engum's Extreme Training. So I have heard a lot about Jon over the years. Either he's been referenced in Strongfirst, manuals and handbooks that I've got, or he's been talked about in a good way by other instructors over the years at Strongfirst events and by Pavel and things like that. So but like I say, it's the first time we've really got to spend time with Jon, and I'm really looking forward to spending 3 full days with him next month. So first of all, Jon, do you want to maybe kind of just, I suppose, go through your own origin story? There's a huge amount, obviously, that I just kind of glossed over there, but I know you've got a history in, training, strength training, flexibility training, obviously martial arts. Where did it all start for you? What's your journey been? And we can kind of dip in and out with questions along the way, if that's okay.
You bet, James. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you guys. I'm super pumped to come back to the UK. I've taught there a few times in the past before the COVID situation, and I'm very happy to get my feet back on soil there and give your listeners and our certification attendees some tips and some tricks and some of my background to improve their goals. My origin story. My background is in Korean martial arts. I currently hold a 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo, a 5th degree black belt in Hapkido, and a 4th degree black belt in Kumdo. And Kumdo is basically Kendo. It's just the Korean version of it. So the difference is basically language and some small nuances. So sword fighting. And I started martial arts. I started the Taekwondo journey kind of on accident. As a kid, I watched the program Kung Fu with David Carradine. And I think a lot of martial artists got their start that way. They got kind of the bug to go check it out. And I'm from a very remote location. And so there was one school here. And I got really lucky because the guy teaching that was an advisor to the South Korean president. He was an immigrant and a very high level Taekwondo practitioner. And he basically adopted me from the age of 6 years old until, well, I'm still training with him. So pretty cool. 91, I was like a 3rd degree black belt, and I opened my first school. And that's all I've ever done. My full-time job has been a martial arts instructor. But we were competing quite heavily. So we would fight every weekend back in the day. And we did not even consider ourselves athletes at all. We were fighters, just knuckle draggers. There was no program design. There was no peaking for an event. Well, there was this kind of cycle. Monday was hard day. Tuesday was harder day. Wednesday was damn hard day. Thursday was, pardon my language, effing hard day. And Friday we'd travel to a competition. Saturday you'd fight. Win, lose, or draw, you're sore on Sunday, but you have to quick heal up because guess what? Monday's hard day again. And this went on for years, and I had pretty good success, but it was also aging me very quickly. I was instead of getting more flexible and more resilient, I was getting stiffer and sore and just, a lot of miles on my body. And you can't believe the embarrassment of being the martial arts master and having new white belts show up at the door, naturally being able to display more flexibility than the quote unquote expert. So I wasn't happy with that. And I made a decision that I was going to try to find the secrets to flexibility. Being that my full-time job was a martial arts instructor, I had time to go and set my own schedule, go and travel around and try to discover the secrets of, unlocking people with flexibility. And I've always been on the mindset that if you can learn one or two take home things, one or two new things, traveling for a seminar or a workshop or a certification, the time and money spent was well worth it. So continue to be a student always. And you might go to a 3-day, event and bring home one or two take home things that gave you, a quarter inch more range of motion. That was a win in my book. So this is what I did. I did this for years. I went to every flexibility expert, every stretching guru I could find. And that's the kind of results I would get. Do this or do this for 6 months, and you'll get a little bit more range of motion. It is progress, but too slow. So they say when the student's ready, the teacher will show up. One day in the mailbox, there was a magazine called Vitalics. And I don't know if you guys have been around the kettlebell world long enough to remember that, but it was a long time ago. And there was this crazy Russian on the cover of this magazine promising instant splits, promising instant strength, and it was too good to be true for sure. But again, if I could find one or two little pieces of the puzzle, time and money well spent. So I went to this Open U flexibility workshop put on by this Russian guy named Pavel, and it cost like $20. I mean, it was super cheap, and I went there, and he's like, now, mind you, James, I've been trying to do the splits since I was like 8 years old, and I was in my 30s when I found this, and I was still very, very far away, not even close. And Pavel says, John, do this and do this and do this, and you will get the splits. I'm like, oh, cool. Like in a year. He goes, no, today. And it happened like magic. It happened like magic. So he said in his accent, comrade, if you like that, you must try kettlebells. And they were having like the 3rd kettlebell certification ever in a couple of weeks. So I signed up for that. And the rest is pretty much history. They used to do all kettlebell certifications in the US, in Minnesota, in St. Paul. And so what I did was I always volunteered to assist whenever a certification was happening. And so I got this incredible apprenticeship with Pavel Satsulin right from the very beginning. I know Brett Jones was at the very first certification. I was at the 3rd one. So I'm the 2nd oldest person in the system. If that's a prize or not, I don't know. Since then, I've put together all those little tidbits of what I've learned about flexibility and strength. A lot of it is based on Pavel's work. He's my mentor, but a lot of other things came from different places and things that worked well for me and my students. And I systemized it into the flexible steel system.
And so the first time that you went to this stretching seminar, stretching workshop was around, did you say 2007? Did I make that up?
No, that might be close. 2007, 2006. Don't quote me on the exact year. It was a long time ago. It was before, Pavel was, world famous.
Yeah.
He was a guy teaching out of a bank vault in St. Paul.
Well, like you say, if you turn up and it's like $20, you know what I mean, to go and spend however many hours with him.
It's incredible.
Yeah, you're right there. Like you say, you were right there at the start, weren't you? Where it was, before it exploded and before, you were right there at the genesis. So that's incredible. Sorry, go on, Paul.
Well, I was about to say, because this is very interesting, because flexibility has been a big part of my journey, having been such a child that was very, very stiff, and there's still things that I really struggle with. But, strength training feels so simple in a way. When we're working with a client, it feels very, very tangible, whereas mobility and flexibility feels so much more fuzzy in terms of how to get your head around it for the average person. And certainly when you start thinking about the progressions, it can often feel like this weird winding kind of road towards, let's try that, and then let's try this, and then this joint's tight and this joint's tight. Whereas like if you want to increase your military press, of course there are nuances, but Let's just add 2.5 kilos. Let's increase the reps. The variables are very small, but with flexibility, it feels like this huge open terrain where there's just dead ends everywhere. What did you start? Did you find many dead ends? Do you think there's dead ends that it's just there's no point going down that route if you want to build flexibility? What have you kind of started to establish as the kind of pillars of progress when it comes to those, to the principles of flexibility?
That's a great question. And the thing is, there's too much information out there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of confusion going on. The simplest way to put this is you need to treat your flexibility training exactly like you treat your strength training, because the way we do flexibility, it is strength training. So we're not talking about sitting and doing relaxed stretching, although there's a piece of the puzzle that's okay. That's a good place for. But mainly we're developing strength in these end ranges. So we treat it and we program it. And that's what most people don't do, Paul, is they don't program their flexibility training like their strength training. So the flexible steel way, in fact, Pavel and I just came out with a product called Quicksilver. It's sold through the BJJ Fanatics thing. And that goes quite heavily into how to program your flexibility training, just like your strength training. But you need to wave the load. You need to have a light day. You need to have a medium day. You need to have a heavy day. And you need to coordinate that with your strength training. So what does that mean? A lot of people think, let's say, that, you have a light day, a heavy day, and a medium day on your strength training, more or less. A lot of people think that, okay, so it's my light day on my lifting. Let's put that as my heavy day, my intense day on my stretching, my flexibility work, because I'm not going to be tired from the strength training. The problem with that is if you do that, you never have a light day. You have a heavy flexibility training day and you follow that with a heavy, strength training day, you just never get recovery. So you need to coordinate those two things together. You do your stretching, your heavy duty isometric stretching as part of your strength training. You program it, you follow your program, you wave the load, you vary the intensity, you vary the frequency. You change some things. So we have something called specialized variety, because eventually in your strength training, in your flexibility training, you hit a plateau. So you need to change things up, but just enough to continue getting the training effect. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So flexibility training to achieve more range of movement is done in conjunction with your strength training. In fact, the same time as it, just at the end of it.
So for example, one of the things that I think probably would confuse people, and our hands up, it's confused me numerous occasions. Like if you're wanting to get a bigger chest, there's a couple of moves that are going to do the work for you. Whether there's the press up or the bench press, something like that. The muscle group feels really obvious. You can tap it. There's my chest. I need to get a bigger chest. But then the hamstrings. What is where is it? A particular attachment? Is it the tilt of the pelvis? You start going down this rabbit hole. And as you said, there's so much information out there. And we're all guilty of being Dr. Google, where we're like, oh, yeah. So it's because my pelvis is anterior tilted. It's putting XYZ on my tendons. And that means that my calf is, is it my calf? Is it my hamstring? Is it my pelvis? Before you know it, you go down this huge rabbit hole.
It's your psoas. It's always your psoas.
It's always your psoas. That's it. Yeah.
You're two clicks away from your psoas.
I remember, I don't know if any of you guys did, I went down that psoas rabbit hole. And I ended up sticking a kettlebell in a certain part of your stomach, trying to, we
all have.
Yeah.
If it's not your psoas, it's your piriformis, you see. I mean, it's the way it goes. Isn't it? You can always tell how long someone's been in the fitness industry by which muscle to blame the problem on, can't you? Because they've gone further into Google.
and to be quite frank, it depends on your goals. How much flexibility do you need? Do you need a lot of flexibility? Well, it depends on what your goals are. It depends on what your sport is. If you're trying to improve some sport, certain things require more flexibility than other things. So the answer is you need enough flexibility to do whatever movement your life or your sport or your hobby requires, plus 10% flexibility reserve. So that when life puts you in an uncomfortable, awkward position, you've been there before, you're strong in that spot. Too much flexibility can be a hindrance, And again, it depends on what you're doing. A ballet person or a kickboxer needs a lot more flexibility than a power lifter, but we all need, a balance of both.
It depends on your, well, not your definition of flexibility, but people, in my experience, people not get it wrong, but misunderstand what it actually is. As in thinking like, oh, I can get my legs behind my head, I'm very flexible. Isn't that great? And it's like, well, the way I see it, and David Keown, who we've had on here, is a great example of this, because he's a stone lifter. He's an ex-kettlebell sport athlete, and he's a stone lifter. He's got much bigger. He's put on like 20 kilos or something since he became a stone lifter, but he does a lot of yoga and stuff like that. So he's super strong, but he's super flexible as well. He can do the prayer thing with his hands behind his back, and he's very good at all of that. And he did a workshop at James's place, and we were talking about the difference between active and passive ranges of motion. So, you can get your leg up here, that's brilliant, but do you have to use you can get your leg behind your head, but do you have to use your arm to bring your leg up over there, or can you do it
through strength
without touching your leg? And if you can do that, so he was talking about closing that gap between active range of motion and passive range of motion is
right.
And the strength in there. And then that is what flexibility actually is. So then you get your BJJ athletes and things like that. And they can get themselves into positions where they're flexible, and someone might put them in that position, but they can't actually get out of it. And then that's when they get injured, isn't it? And it's because they're in that position, but they can't control it. So, I mean, I don't know if I've explained that, but how would you explain that to somebody who, because like I say, you get a lot of people who think they're flexible, and they maybe are, but they've got no strength in that position. And then you said something great there with flexibility is actually strength. They're both the same thing.
I think the question would be really good, Pete. Just is, I suppose, what is flexible steel? What do you what is flexible steel? How did you come up with that, and what is that interplay or that crossover between strength and flexibility?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the flexible steel program was born again. I have to give credit to my mentor, Pavel. He was teaching a workshop back in the day called Hardstyle Ventura. And it was like a 3-day, just a fun thing, a little bit of everything, right? And his closing remarks, his challenge for everybody was, you should be strong and flexible at the same time. So a worthwhile goal would be to work yourself up to being able to press a kettlebell closest to half your body weight and do a side split. Not at the same time, but, have that type of mobility, flexibility, and strength built into one. And I'm like, that's it. That is exactly what flexible steel is. Because if you can do a side split and you can have a half body weight press, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's a good benchmark to show strength and flexibility. And boy, if you could do both at the same time, you'd be like a mutant, right? So that's where flexible steel was born. We want to have flexibility, but not to the detriment or sacrifice of our strength. And the same is true the other side. We want to be strong, but not to the, detriment of our flexibility. We want to have both at the same time. We want to be flexible and strong. We want to have our cake and eat it too, right? We want to be flexible steel. Flexible steel bends, it doesn't break.
Well, that was it. We had what's his name? Oh God, the back specialist. Why is my brain gone?
Stu McGill.
That's the one. Yeah, and he was talking about like the body of a yogi versus the body of a powerlifter. Powerlifter doesn't want too much flexibility because they're trying to create stiffness, and obviously, if a yogi doesn't want to be too tense, but things like people like martial artists, and a lot of actually very high performing individuals seem to have ungodly strength and range of motion. So what do you think people are missing to get them from that bendiness and stiffness, and that the best of both worlds that you've just mentioned. What is it that they're doing different when you get the best of both worlds?
Usually someone sacrifices one aspect for the other. What McGill said is exactly correct. At the very, very top level, you do have to sacrifice for your sport. You have to be a specialist. I mean, we just talked about, you guys mentioned somebody that was in Girevoy sport. All right. There's techniques in Girevoy sport that are specific to the outcome of that sport. Is it good for a GPP? No, because it's so specialized. I mean, they're great athletes, but their technique is designed to help them get through the 10 minutes. Where Strongfirst style kettlebelling, the goal isn't to snatch the kettlebell for 10 minutes. It's not to clean and jerk the kettlebell for 10 minutes. It's to make you strong and conditioned for whatever other sport you want to do, if this makes sense. So the biggest thing people are missing out on is they're not focusing as intensely with their flexibility training as they are with their strength training. It's an afterthought. Okay, I'm done with my strength training. I need to stretch a little bit. If you do that, the results will show. They're not going to, be very good. If you program it and you put it into your training regimen, just like you would your military press or your snatch or your squat, the results will show. If it's an afterthought, you're not going to get very far. So the thing is to just have a nice balanced program. And there's kind of a movement in the personal training field right now where stretching is bad for you. It's not good. It's a waste of time. And when you delve into this a little deeper, you realize they're not talking about all stretching. They're just talking about passive static stretching. And then you see what they want you to do instead. And it's some type of mobility drill or what they call, what's the big buzzword right now? Movement prep, but it is still stretching. It's just the stretching encompasses such a wide range of things. At Flexible Steel, we don't naturally or specifically teach you this is the stretch for you. We teach you principles to make whatever you want to do much better and much more effective, taking the guesswork out of what James said. There's so many things to think about. We have 3 main principles in Flexible Steel, and we have 18 what we call power tools. So these power tools can amp up anything you're doing, just make it much better, much more effective. And that's where we're getting these instant unlocks. I mean, people are amazed. It's not uncommon within maybe 3 minutes to give someone 15 to 20 more degrees of rotational ability like that. Or someone that's never touched their toes before in their life, they've got their palms on the ground, in a few minutes. And we're not really making their muscles longer. We're just kind of re-educating their nervous system to allow them to display the length of muscle they already have.
I suppose that's one of the things that, we've all been trained by Paul McElroy, and one of his big quotes is, strength isn't built, it's granted. And, that what you just said there goes right to the heart of that, which is where, flexibility is very much a conversation with the nervous system in your brain, isn't it? And stability is there for a very good reason, isn't it? The stiffness is probably there because the body's trying to solve a problem of stability, and the joint or that group of joints is unstable and therefore at risk. And I suppose what you're doing is saying is trying to convince it that it's strong enough. Not convince it, but I mean, what would you say? Would you say it's convincing it? Because it's not a trick, is it? It's not like you're trying to trick the nervous system. You're trying to.
No, it's not. It's
what would you call it?
If we can use these power tools to get you past this plateau that you've bumped up against,
yeah,
your nervous system, once it's been there, realizes you're not going to die if you go there again, and it's much easier to go there a second time. So let's talk about the splits. The splits aren't something everybody has to do. It's a great display of flexibility, but not everybody needs it. If you need it, it's good. Like if you have to kick someone high, or if you have to get your leg up, I'm thinking like some type of dancer. Yeah, you need that kind of flexibility. Most people don't. But the first split you ever do is way harder than the second one you do. And eventually it gets so easy that you might have to stretch once a month to maintain it.
That's really interesting because I've done a lot of research into flexibility, and you see a lot of athletes post workout. So like you'll see like Olympic lifters like Klokov, and they're doing a stretch routine and they don't spend that long in their ranges of motion. And so essentially you would say it's just reminding the brain that that your body can access it. And therefore once you've built it, and that's the hard part, is the building it. But once you've built it, the maintenance is really just regular familiarity with the end range.
Exactly. Yeah. And the way to get there is using our power tools. We can do an experiment on you right now, Paul, if you'd like.
You can. Damn it.
First time ever. Live.
Yeah.
That's why I've kept quiet.
If you're watching on YouTube, yeah, go on.
Does it involve sitting down on the sofa?
Well, look, if you stand up, let's see what we can see of you. Can we see just your upper body? That would be just great.
Yeah.
We're going to get Paul to do the splits.
Oh, God.
Well,
I've got a very new carpet. And
next week, Paul will be like, here, I'm coming from A&E.
You'll still be there. He'll still be there. Okay, yeah, this will work. This will work just fine. So what I'm going to teach you is something that we call the 3 S's of movement. And the 3 S's are applicable no matter if you're loaded, unloaded, moving slow, moving fast. All right. S number 1 stands for strength. Instead of yielding to gravity, use strength to move yourself into position. S number 2 stands for space. So if you think about the human body in really simplistic terms, you're a bag of tissue and bone. All right. If we make more space inside this bag, theoretically, you should be able to move much smoother, much easier. All right. And the 3rd S stands for spread. So spread the load. So we're not going to just try to force movement from one joint or another, but we're going to get little bitty improvements throughout your whole body that add up into big things. I mean, there's some weird things that we do with the ankle that instantly makes the shoulder flexibility and mobility dramatically increase. It's just strange stuff. We call it voodoo cheese. But you're going to be our guinea pig, Paul. And normally in experiments, the guinea pig dies, but you're going to survive this, I promise.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
All right. What I want you to do is, we're not going to be able to see this, so you just have to be honest about it. Your feet can't move and your knees have to stay locked. Okay, those are the 2 rules. Feet can't move, knees need to stay locked. And what I want you to do is just rotate as far as you possibly can without moving your knees, without moving your feet. And when you get as far as you can, I want you to pick out a landmark with your vision, memorize it, and come back. And we're all kind of looking at how far you went.
Okay.
Good.
Yep.
That's good. And come back. All right. We're going to do this. You can relax now. We're going to do this 2 more times, Paul. But here's the thing. Your knees can't bend and your feet can't move. And I want you to try to turn at the same rate. So don't try to go faster or slower, but turn at the same rate. But this time, you're going to have 3 focuses. While you're turning to your right. I want you to try to drive your left heel through the floor. So you're going to drive your left heel through the floor. You're going to contract your left glute as hard as you possibly can, almost to the point of cramping it. And the third thing that you're going to do, I want you to visualize, let's say this is my hip. As I'm rotating, I want to visualize this getting longer and longer and longer. And the further I go, the longer this spreads. Now, this is part 1. It has 3 steps. Drive your heel, contract your glute, and spread the hip. Visually, just in your mind, virtually spread your hip and see what happens. No faster or slower than before. Really drive your heel, really crush your glute, and open the hip.
Yeah.
He's gonna do a full tip like the exercise.
All right.
Yeah,
so that's part 1. Now, part 2 is where this gets kind of freaky. You just have to, trust me, stay with me here. You're going to rotate 1 more time. Same rules. Don't move your feet. Don't bend your knees. Try to rotate the same speed as before. But this time, in addition to driving your heel, contracting your left glute and telescoping your hip. I want you to imagine that I have this collar on your neck, and there's a chain on this collar that goes up to like a pulley, and I'm pulling down on the chain, and what that's doing is it's pulling you up and making space between each vertebrae. It's putting you into traction. All right. And as you turn, just wait, there's more. As you turn, I want you to visualize each individual vertebrae rotating, kind of like a bike lock. Start at your tailbone and work your way all the way up through your spine. Now, how many vertebrae do you have? It's a trick question.
Yeah.
What?
20 something.
Well, a bunch, right? So you have to rotate a bunch of them as you go. When you get as far as you possibly can, Paul, I want you to imagine that your backbone, your spine, is sticking out of the top of your head, and I want you to rotate 7 or 8 virtual vertebrae, and that's at your absolute limit. Okay. Let me recap, because it's a lot to think about. All right? You're not going to move your feet. You're not going to bend your knees. You're going to rotate the same speed as you did before. Not yet. Wait. Stop. You need to drive your heel, contract your left glute, open the hip, pull yourself into traction, sequentially rotate each vertebrae starting at your tailbone, working your way all the way up through the spine, and then rotate 7 or 8 virtual vertebrae at the very end. See what happens.
Right.
That's it. Drive the heel, elongate, rotate those virtual vertebrae, pick out your new landmark, and come back. Look at him go.
I swear I probably went about that much further. Well, it's what it felt like anyway.
About.
Sorry.
That's what it felt like. I was looking at that.
Where was your point to your first baseline? Where was your first?
So that just in
landmark,
the corner around there.
And then after part one,
over on that side of the photo here.
And then finally, that was
there,
right?
and then I went to there.
Okay, so he easily got 15 degrees more rotation.
Yeah,
now just think about that. 15 degrees more rotation. What sport couldn't be improved by making your rotation much easier? Anything that demands throwing, whether it's throwing a ball, throwing a kick, throwing a punch, backing out of your driveway.
I was going to say maybe like golf, baseball, that sort of thing with that.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And so would you just regularly access that range, and then eventually it just becomes something that you can just easily access?
Yeah. So how much harder were you working?
The second time? I mean, I was working equally as hard each time, I think. But I mean, in the sense that the first time, by the time I got to the end range, it felt difficult. Whereas I felt more organized by the time I was working hard. By the end of the sequence, I felt like I was in more control.
So no more effort, though.
No more effort. No.
Now, and that's the cool thing. That is the cool thing. So they say that strength that doesn't reach is wasted. So we just gave you more reach for your strength without making you use more effort. Just simply, I guess you could call it a software update.
Yeah.
We use the principle of the 3 S's. We use strength, we made space inside your body, and we spread the load. And that's kind of what that 1-day level 1 flexible cert does. We do 8 hours of that type of thing. People leave there being able to, they have these incredible instant results. And the cool thing is it's not a party trick. It sticks with you. If you wanted to keep that, I would do that in the morning when you got up and in the evening before you went to bed for about a week, and it's yours. You own it.
I don't want to put people off from coming, but I think I'll probably have to come to the event.
I was just going to say,
podcast is do the other direction. Otherwise, you're going to be walking in a circle.
I was just going to say, actually, Paul, because you're only an hour away in London, aren't you? You'll have to come down you'll have to come for the day.
Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely.
What I find interesting is it'll be interesting to know what's going on here, because to my mind, you can tell us whether I'm right or wrong, but to my mind, number one, visualization of something is massive, because we visualize everything. And there's a thing I do for like a mindset practice is to visualize an outcome and keep doing that. And then actually it makes the outcome like any goal that you've got or anything like that. Like it becomes part of you, and you're thinking about it all the time. And if people struggle with that, it's like, well, wherever you are right now, you've been visualizing that, and that's why you are where you are. So that it helps with that, and visualization helps with like loads with movement. But in my mind as well, what's happened there is like, it spread the load, squeeze your left glute and all that. And Paul obviously wasn't thinking about that when he was doing it the first time. But then the second time you think about that. So then what you're saying, I think, is then that becomes automatic, and your central nervous system will do that every time you rotate. If you do it enough, from then on, it will just keep doing that automatically.
Yes, of course. That's it. If you can use those 3 S's, if you figure out how to use those 3 S's to your advantage, using strength, making space, and spreading the load, it's going to make anything you do much better, much more efficient. Again, I said it's the same no matter if you're doing bodyweight movement, martial arts, or you're trying to do a back squat. The principle is the same. So that's just one example. That's one of the 18 power tools that we use. So we can take those 3 S's and apply it to anything you want to move deeper into. I did a flexible steel certification in Israel. This must have been 5 years ago now, because it was before the pandemic, on Christmas Day. And there was 100 people at this cert. 50% of them were Kyokushin, karate people. The other 50% were yogis. Okay, so high-level yoga practitioners. And to be honest, I've never taken a yoga class in my life. All right. But I know the principles of flexible steel. So I took those people, these yoga guys that were trying to get into these asanas, these postures, and they'd come up against some plateaus. They hadn't been able to break through these plateaus in a long, long time. And that day, just by, show me what you want to get better at. All right, this is how you can apply these 18 different power tools. Every one of them broke through plateaus that they were stuck in for years. And they were just amazed. But it's just using the system. It's just plugging in our principles into whatever movement you want to improve. Power of a roundhouse kick. We can almost double that. And it sounds too good to be true until you actually do it. I mean, if I sat here and told you I could give Paul 15 degrees more rotation in less than a minute, you'd think I was, crazy, right? But doing is knowing.
This is another thing that fascinates me, is that people think, so this is the same with strength and things like that. People think, right, I need to build more muscle to get stronger. And it's like, you've already got the requirement. You've already got what you need. You just need to make the stuff that you've got stronger. And Paul alluded to what Paul McElroy says as well. It's like, you've already got that strength. You don't need to make the muscle stronger. You just need to make your central nervous system more aware that it is there, which is what strength is, isn't it? I suppose. And this is the same. So Paul's already got that rotation. He just didn't know how to access it. So it is so. And this is what I'm saying to people at home who are listening to this, who maybe, like who sit most of the day or whatever. It's like, you have got all of that requirement. It's all there within you. You just need to know how to access it through the principles like that, isn't it? That's basically, I think everyone's got everything that they require, apart from, people who've had like, traumas and broken bones and broken things like that. That might hold you back a little bit. However, there's still ways to get over that, isn't there?
I think it's easy to think that every discipline speaks a different language in a way. When it doesn't, there's a kind of a universal way the body communicates. I mean, I was watching videos on Jay Cutler, the Olympic, Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
And he's talking about like the difference between powerlifting and bodybuilding, and it being the mind-muscle connection. There is, he's trying to get one particular outcome from his body, which is hypertrophy in a larger muscle. And it was less about the weights he was using and more about his intention. So I can see with this flexible steel, your intention as an individual to create flexibility is more important than, your genetics, etc. It sounds like a very empowering approach that allows you to directly tap into that kind of universal software that pretty much any sport is trying to access, but just in a different way.
I think what you could say is that we'll allow you to reach your potential much quicker.
Mhm.
You know, so strong first and flexible steel, we're partner systems, by the way. And we do kind of the same thing. That's why it fits so well together. We allow people to reverse engineer what the best in the world are already doing,
I
you
like
know?
that.
And a natural athlete does this without thinking about it. It just happens, right? Through training. Someone might have coached them in the first place, and someone might not have. They might just be freaks of nature. But if we can reverse engineer what they're doing naturally and allow average people to, meet their potential much quicker than if they just struggle. I mean, if I told you, okay, rotate and work on your rotation and come back in a month and let me know, what your results are, I doubt that they'd be as much as what you got just now, because we taught you the power principles. So it's a fast track in one situation, in one sense of the word, but it also, if you keep training that, it's just much more efficient than beating your head against the wall and doing traditional quote unquote stretching.
I have to say, I'm really, I'm really looking forward to the SFB, which I did it the first time with you. You were there as well, Pete, weren't you? And Fabio taught the SFB last time when we hosted it. But I'm really looking forward to the SFB again, and especially learning from yourself with that. But I think the flexible steel, I'm really I'm really interested and intrigued by it, because for myself, I used to be very supple and very flexible and used to do a lot of mobility and stretching and static stretching and things. And I intentionally have kind of moved away from that a little bit, because I've mentioned it on the podcast before, I had a lot of back issues. I think I was doing too much stretch, or the stretching I was doing wasn't helping. So actually now focusing more on strength, and I've been through like the SFL and the SFB and the SFG and things, now focusing on strength and training, and specifically intentionally moving away from flexibility. I feel like my body's kind of knitted together a bit more tightly, and I don't get any back pain and back problems and things. And I'm still probably not inflexible. I'm still, because I'm doing strength training for a full range of motion.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really interested to do the flexible steel and to learn it, and because I kind of miss stretching in a way, but I don't want to stretch and then have it hamper, my strength training and potentially flare up back things if I become too loose again. I don't know if is that something that you encounter, people having this fear around stretching and becoming too loose?
Most people, and I'm generalizing, have tight hamstrings and tight hip flexors and overstretched lower backs. So we don't stretch the lower back at all. The lower back is usually, and again, I'm generalizing, but the lower back is usually just a victim of tight hamstrings and tight hip flexors. And people do their stretching wrong, and they overstretch, the erectors, the lower back, and the hamstrings and hip flexors and all that other garbage is still tight. So yeah, the key is the two most common sources of non-contact injury, back injuries, are tight hamstrings and tight hip flexors. It's an oversimplification, but they're leading contributors to this. So if we can take care of those two things and just don't even think about stretching the lower back on its own, it's a wonderful thing. I'm the same way. I'm very flexion intolerant, just through years and years of abusing my body. And when I stopped trying to quote unquote stretch my tight lower back, that's when I started getting results and no more back pain.
I think that what you've just said there really, really resonates with me, because I know that Claire Booth, who obviously Strongfirst UK, she had sort of said, she can see I'm kind of flexion intolerant, and like you say, if the lower back is already loose, or loose in most people, and then you're stretching that further, you're adding to that instability, I suppose, and then getting the issue. Whereas since I've been really focusing on deadlifting and back squatting and creating tension and getting tight, it feels brilliant. It feels really, really good now. But if we're not going to be stretching the lower back, but I'm really looking forward to it.
That's why I built a lot of, I mean, the big game changer for my low back and flexion intolerant was doing back extensions on one of those kind of roaming chairs. Just taking it through that range and slowly building the confidence in it. I mean, I crippled by it for a while. It's when I suppose that's one thing. When you've got one area which is weak, it just makes it's like Jenga, isn't it? You've taken that piece of that block out of a really key area and everything else starts to feel unstable, doesn't it? When your low back is gone or your knee or something, everything else feels really unstable, even if it's healthy, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Think about it like two guys working at a warehouse and one guy's slacking off, just, leaning up against the wall, smoking a cigarette, not doing his job. The other guy has to do twice as much work. The guy smoking the cigarette resting is not going to be complaining. It's the guy that's doing all this extra work that's going to break down,
Yeah.
There's I've heard it. I've got two things actually, but I've heard that as a plane, an airplane gets put into a holding pattern, and if you leave it there, it'll just run out of petrol and just crash. And that's the same as your body, like your central nervous system just gets put into that holding pattern if you've injured something, and it stays there until you tell it to land or do something different or whatever. But so what do you think about this? This comes from what James said, and I've literally, what are we on now? We're nearly 4 o'clock. I had a conversation with someone about this about an hour and a half ago, who've got a sore shoulder, and they've been foam rolling it, and they've had the hockey ball in it and the tennis ball, and they've had it cupped, and they've had it prodded and poked and acupuncture and everything, and it's still not getting any better. And James was talking about this about his lower back. You were rolling on things and stretching things and all of this. And I was saying that just brings more awareness to the fact that there's something going on there, which isn't necessarily lower back, but you're just bringing awareness to it. So I told this person, I said, stop doing all of that for a couple of weeks, and we'll just work on like building some strength into it and see what happens. And it might work, it might not, because I had the conversation this afternoon. So I can't say whether it's worked or not, but we'll see in a few weeks. Yeah. But James did the same thing. So what do you think about that? It would be interesting to know, because obviously, doing the flexible steel stuff and everything doesn't really involve using any implements, right? It's using your central nervous system and your body. So what do you think about that? Because some people, that's their go-to thing. This is tight, I'll just roll it. And it's like, well, yeah, but what does that actually do?
So when we work on the shoulders, we have formulas. So the first part of the day when we do this certification is a basic mobility drills. Maybe the first 2 hours, we call it mobility 101. And then after that, we start doing what we call the flexible steel chapters. So give me more rotation. I've never touched my toes before, so hamstrings. And we have a shoulder program, right? The shoulder program has about 10 steps, and only the 2 last ones do we actually try to stretch the shoulder. We clear everything else up, starting at the ankle, believe it or not. And each step of the way, again, talking about it, it sounds crazy, but if you come and do it, you'll see the results. Or if you go to flexiblesteel.com, you'll see before and after photos of guys that could barely get their arm vertical, and we do some monkey business to their ankles, and the next thing they know, they're way past where they're able to raise their arms before, pretty much pain-free. Now, it's not guaranteed for everybody. In fact, none of us are doctors. The flexible steel instructor group, none of us are doctors, none of us are physical therapists, so we don't deal with pain. If you have pain issues, of course you should go to a medical professional, but if you're just tight and stiff, we can unlock you, guaranteed.
That's fantastic. And you made a comment, I can't remember exactly the context, but you the phrase you used earlier was throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and I think that's probably what I did with all stretching, because I just thought, well, actually I feel better, I'm not stretching. And I know that when I was doing lots of foam rolling and lots of stretching and lots of mobility before, I wasn't feeling great, so I stopped doing all of it, when really I need to. I think it's probably done me some good actually having a break from it and strengthening my body and getting to feel good. And now I'm probably ready to, when you come over next month, to kind of dip my toe back in the water and try it with a more, and like you say, a sensible, structured approach, rather than just
The shotgun.
just throwing everything at something and seeing what sticks. Actually having a bit of a method and a bit of a system and a bit of an approach to it, which will be really good. No,
Do you guys know Granville Mares? He's Strongfirst team leader from Canada.
Yeah, we've not spoke or met, but he's someone we'd like to get on the podcast. Yeah.
Okay, so Granville is strong, but he's also pretty tight, right? Granville's strong, and I'm going to use him as an example how flexibility can make you more stronger if you need it. There's a couple different ways, but Granville, when I first met him, he went through the HKC. This is many years ago, and he didn't pass that day because he couldn't do a get up with a 12-kilogram kettlebell. Yes, now this is a guy that can deadlift a house. He's incredibly strong, but at the time he was very tight. So kudos to Granville. He found his weak link and he started working on it. He came to a flexible steel certification. And what I typically do before we do the shoulders, I say, okay, go try to press a kettlebell, your 1 rep max, just get a baseline of how easy that went up, how hard it was. People go and do that. And then we do the shoulder program. And then they usually set a PR in their press afterwards. It's pretty cool. So I told this to Granville, and Granville's very humble. He went and looked at the kettlebells and he came back and he said, my PR bell's not here. The heaviest bell is a 48. So I'm like, well, just do that for reps, and then we'll do the shoulder program, and then we'll have you rep out on again and see what the difference is. And so he pressed the 48 for 14 reps. Did I tell you he's strong?
Yeah.
So he puts the 48 up for 14 reps, and now I'm inspired. It's like, okay, this guy's super strong. Let's see what happens. So I just worked with him. We spent maybe 5 minutes taking him through the formula. And I asked him to press the bell again for, rep max. Now, what would you expect? Let's put it into context of a pull-up. Let's say I had you do as many pull-ups as you could possibly do. I put a gun to your head and said, do a pull-up or die. And you did all these. What would your number be? I mean, it doesn't matter, but let's just shoot a number out.
What if he did the 14 to begin with, then he went back to it 5 minutes later?
Yeah, but in reference to pull-ups, if I said do a max set of pull-ups, what would your number be?
Probably about 15 at the moment.
Okay, 15. And then I gave you a 4 or 5 minute break and I said, do it again. What would you expect the second set to be, more or less?
Oh, less, probably like 10 to 12.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're tired, right?
Yeah.
The pull-up is quote unquote heavier now. So this is what I expected with Granville. I thought that his rep max would go way down. He pressed it for 18 reps.
Okay.
He got 4 more reps on his second set than his first set after we did some of this stuff. And all it was it's an oversimplification again, but let's say it took him 10 pounds of, he had to overcome 10 pounds of internal resistance just to get his arm into a vertical position before. And we took maybe 8 pounds of effort away from him just by unlocking him. In essence, it made that kettlebell feel 8 pounds lighter. So it's pretty cool things. If you're super tight and you have to fight your body to get into position to start with, a little bit of this flexibility training can, give you a PR in your press, no problem at all. And it makes it feel much better.
That's a very interesting thing for me because I'm training kettlebell sport, and really over that 10 minutes, anything that's internal resistance robs you of efficiency. And you might as well just have the handbrake on, because that's mobility is basically a handbrake, and it just depends how hard the handbrake's been pulled. Overhead fixation, being able to lock out, understanding my lat flexibility, my thoracic flexibility, also my ability to relax my quads with the overhead position and with straight legs in the rack position. All these things, it's very, as you said, I'm fighting my own body to maintain the stacking of my joints, and that's robbing me of energy when I should be recovering in the transition positions. So
yeah, especially for kettlebell sport. I mean, if you're specialized in that, those guys are incredible athletes, but you have to be as efficient as possible to get a good number. Am I correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, without doubt. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, like a hamstring flexibility in the snatch, the being able to put your arm overhead and lock out the joints so the kettlebell's just at rest and you're not using any muscle power when it's locked out, so the flexibility key. So I'm definitely gonna have to come on in May.
Yeah, you'd have to.
I'm really excited to be back and do the SFB too. I've taught SFG1 in the UK and SFG2, but they haven't had a chance to have me there for the bodyweight instructor cert. And here's the promise I'm going to give you guys. If you come, you're going to get 2 days of the most intense ab work you've ever had without any direct ab work at all.
Looking forward to that, are you?
I remember last time we did it, it was the first time I'd ever, I started having cramps and spasms in in the abs, just and like you say, and it's not from doing crunches or anything, it's just from trying to get that kind of brace and tight and just keep everything strong.
I remember you, James, when we did the hollow position and I stood on your legs and they just went bang, and you were like, right, let's work on that shoulder.
So let me ask you this: how did your lower back feel after all that? Because here's kind of the cool thing: what most people report is their lower back feels more amazing than it had in years. If that's been a troublesome thing.
Yeah, no, definitely, without a doubt. And like I say, it's good at the moment. I'm back to full kind of working on my one arm, one leg push up and the pistol, and the pull ups are kind of my something I find fairly comfortable. So it's the one arm, one leg press up and the pistol where I really need to work, to get it good. So no, that's fantastic. What we'll do, John, I mean, that's flown by. That hour has just absolutely flown by talking with you. So maybe at some stage we'll have to get you back on to talk again, because we're obviously going to be spending time with you next month, which is brilliant. But I would say, if for anyone who is interested after this conversation in coming along to, the flexible steel and or the Strongfirst SFB that John is taking we're literally in Chelmsford in Essex. It's like half an hour outside of London on the train in the southeast of England. What we'll do, Pete, we'll put some links, won't we, for signing up for flexible steel and things.
If you send them across to me, I'll
with the show notes. Yeah, we'll put them in the show notes. And it sounds like Paul's going to come, aren't you, Paul?
Yeah, definitely.
He has to get the other side,
I'll be walking around in circles, so if I get lost on the M25.
Thank you for being a good sport, by the way.
I just want to say it's nothing personal, but I won't be there. But I'm actually out for dinner that night for Sean's birthday, so I can't really. He doesn't know that yet, but he doesn't listen to the podcast either, so it's okay.
He won't see this.
Do me. So, John, just if people, obviously, we're going to share, links to, signing up for flexible steel, links to SFB and everything else. If people want to follow you and find out more about everything that you do, in terms of your teaching, you mentioned, we didn't speak about it this time, but it's Quicksilver, isn't it, the new program that you've done with Pavel? Maybe we can come and talk about that next time. But if people want to kind of find out more about you and what you do, what's the best way for them to do so? Is it social media? Is it website? What would you prefer?
Website is www.flexiblesteel.com. That's a pretty easy way to get attached to us, get connected to us. We have Instagram page, Flexible Steel International, as well as Facebook with the same name. So you could find us that way pretty easy. I'm hoping to see a bunch of you next month in the UK, and we'll unlock you. There's no experience necessary. You don't need to be super flexible. In fact, that's one of the things that's kind of weird. The people that come to a flexible steel certification are usually people that are very flexible to start with, and that's cool. But we do things for someone that's very tight. We do variations for someone that's, average. And then we do some stuff for the mutants too. So it's beneficial for everybody. You will leave there with instant tools if you're a trainer for your students that are going to just leapfrog you, years and years advanced as far as results go. So it's well worth the time.
Excellent. No, well, it's actually quite fortuitous, really, because we were meant to have Karen Smith on today from Texas, and she got her dates mixed up. So I've moved her later and managed to like we organized this fairly short notice to get you on today, which is great because it means it will go out sooner and people will have an opportunity to listen and then to sign up. A bit more time to sign up for Flexible Steel and sign up for the Strongfirst SFB as well. So no, that's brilliant, Jon. Thank you so much. That was it was like I say, that hour just sometimes time just flies by, and it has today. And it's been good fun watching Paul become more flexible in his flat as well, or his house, in his lounge there.
In his bed sit, is that what you're saying?
In his bed. Anyway, no, I meant in your room. It does look like
a mansion,
a self-contained living space. Okay,
well, I've been annexed by my wife.
Oh, you've been annexed. Okay, so thank you so much, Jon. Thank you to Pete and to Paul as usual. Thank you to all of you for listening. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening on a platform that allows you to do so. Please do also, if you'd like to join the Facebook group, just go into group, search Health Oddity, and we will let you in. And really would be great to see some of you at the Flexible Steel it's a Friday, the 19th of May. In Chelmsford. It'd be really good to meet some of you guys if you can sign up for that. And I'd also like, if possible, if you are on Instagram, if you are on Facebook, please do go on and follow us and like us on Instagram and Facebook. That helps us get out there to more people. So we will see you next week. I think we got Dennis next week, haven't we? Dennis Vasilev.
Yeah.
11 times kettlebell sport world champion, joining us next week. So we're speaking, like I say, we've got 5 weeks of fantastic guests lined up. And like I say, we'll really look forward to meeting Jon in person next month when he comes over to England. So until next week, take care and goodbye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.